This happened in the summer of 2010. My family took a trip to a nice hotel in the city. This hotel had a strange design to it. The lobby was actually on the 4th floor. There was no way for you to get to it from the stairs. The hotel was organized in a square shape. Essentially, if you were walking to your room, you could be seen by anyone on your floor if they just stepped out of their room and looked around. On the 3rd day of being there, things got strange fast. I woke up to the sound of screaming coming from outside my door. Now, because of the hotel's design, I mentioned, sounds from the lobby would echo up to the top of the building. So when I walked outside to investigate, I immediately looked over the balcony to see all the commotion. I saw a girl lying on the ground. People were rushing to help her, and I heard a couple of people yelling at each other to call 911. It seemed like the girl was unconscious. I scanned the lobby and saw my family and friends were getting breakfast, all staring at the event in front of them. I decided to rush down to meet them to find out what happened. The elevator was on the opposite side of my floor, so I took the stairwell located right next to my room. We were on the 7th or 8th floor, so I knew I only had to take about 4 flights down. I descended for a little while, looking for the number 4 on the wall, or the letter L. I passed floor 5, ready to find a door to the lobby. It took about 2 more flights of steps before realizing that there hadn't been a door for the 4th floor, nor had there been a door for the 3rd or 2nd. Now, I probably should have turned back at this point, but I continued down. I quickly hit the bottom floor, a dimly lit and cold room with cinder block walls and concrete floors. In front of me was a set of double doors. I hesitated at first, but I assumed that this was just another way back to the lobby, so I opened them and entered. Behind the doors was a massive warehouse-type room, probably the size of a smaller basketball court. The only light coming in was from the stairwell behind me, so I wasn't able to see much. Stairs were stacked and covered in plastic wrap. Tables lined the wall, and in the distance, I thought I could see boxes stacked in line against the wall as well. I looked around and saw an elevator in the back of the room, so I made my way towards it. As I got closer to the elevator, I noticed it was a little bigger than the elevators in the lobby and other floors. I pressed the up button, but got no response. I looked over and there was a card swiper next to the button. I turned back towards the stairwell doors, making my way past the chairs and tables along the wall. When I got to the door, I tugged at it. Locked, of course. This is when things started to hit me and I realized I was stuck in the dark, dusty basement of a hotel. Everyone likely assumed I was still asleep in the room, so I began to freak out, believing that nobody was going to look for me. I searched around the warehouse, looking for other ways out. Some areas of the place were better lit than others, so I looked around in areas I could see first, before starting on the darker side of the room. There was one other set of doors that I found, but it happened to be locked as well. I think only a handful of minutes passed before I heard a door creak open. It wasn't the door from the stairwell, but rather the second door I had found. A slim middle-aged man in a lab coat came out of the doors. I was only 12 or 13 at the time, I don't remember, so I immediately was relieved at the sight of an adult who looked smart. I approached him, tears in my eyes, and he immediately looked surprised to see me. He began to walk towards the doors with the stairwell, and I followed, relieved that someone had finally come to save me. He approached the doors and I began to reach for the handle, but he continued walking. "Isn't it right here?" I will never forget the look on his face when I said that. He looked nervous, and though it was dim, I could see sweat glistening from his forehead and behind his glasses. "No, it's this way." I knew that there were no doors by those boxes where he was leading me. I checked there first after I found out the stairwell door was locked. I want to thank God for gifting me with the idea I had next. I started yelling, as loud as I could. I yelled so loud I gave myself a headache. The man, irritated and plugging his ears, began yelling back at me. Finally, the man snapped and began quickly walking toward me. I went in a full sprint towards the stairwell doors, hoping to God they'd somehow be magically open. He didn't run after me, he walked sternly behind me. I was about 5 feet from the door when somebody burst through. It was a hotel janitor who had heard the screaming from the stairwell. He saw the situation, me and some random guy in a lab coat in a locked basement, and immediately told me to get behind him. The janitor asked me who the man was. I said I had no idea, and that he had come in through the door on the other side of the room, and I pointed to the door. The janitor quickly radioed into the desk that he had found a child in the basement. The man in the lab coat started trying to argue with the janitor, claiming that he was looking for a bathroom, but the janitor wasn't buying it. I was standing beside him the whole time, trying to take in what was happening, confused out of my mind. Eventually, an employee from the front desk arrived and took me back up the steps to the lobby where I met with my family, who surprisingly had no idea I was missing. I told them the story, crying and shaking, and they hugged me tightly, thanking the employee over and over again for their help. I never got to thank that janitor though. This was so long ago, but thinking back now, it was such a bad time and a bad place to get lost in an unfamiliar place. I attended cosmetology school a few years back, and one time we all went on a field trip to see a big show where they were going to show us new hair and nail techniques. It was in a bigger city a few hours away from where I was attending school. We all sort of divided into our rooms to get hotel rooms for a show to save money. So I and 3 other girls booked one hotel room to stay in together. After we checked into the hotel and got to our room, we were all pretty excited before the hair and fashion show, so we decided to go and get some drinks and food. When we returned to the hotel an hour or so later, we quietly headed to our room. We were all just hanging out in our room planning the day when sometime after 11 p.m., our hotel room phone rang. It kind of startled us because I've stayed in hotels quite a few times and I never remember my hotel phone ringing. I answered it and said, "Hello?" A man on the phone replied, "Hey, you haven't paid for your room yet. Can you come down to the hotel lobby?" Immediately, alarm bells went off in my head because I definitely remembered we had paid for the room. I don't think they would have given us room keys if we hadn't paid. I replied that we had paid for the room and that if there was a problem with billing, we could sort it out tomorrow morning. Then on the phone, the man says, "You need to come down now because you haven't paid yet. I can see it in our records." Honestly, I'm a paranoid person, but the whole thing felt so wrong that there was no way I was letting any of us go down to the lobby that night. I told him that he would be staying in our room until they came and removed us. This time, he sounds even more frustrated, insisting one of us must come down or there will be consequences. That was the last straw for me, as now I was sure something was about to happen, so I hung up the phone and figured if this is someone from the hotel, it will come up to our room or we will deal with it tomorrow. The next morning, as we went to check out, we asked the person working at the front desk what the call last night was about and if we needed to make a payment. They had no idea what we were talking about, and they insisted that the front desk would not call us that late at night. We all just sort of looked at each other and were extremely freaked out, so we just left the hotel very quickly after that. My boyfriend and I recently traveled to Orlando for a quick trip to Disney. We decided to save money by staying at a resort about 15 minutes from the parks. Anyway, we had just gotten back from a long day of being at Universal and we were lying in bed drinking beer and watching TV. After about an hour of being back, there was a knock on the door, and my boyfriend got up to answer. A man, dressed in a white t-shirt and blue jeans, was at the door and my boyfriend asked if everything was alright. He hesitated a little and said, "We got a 911 call from this room. Is everyone okay?" My boyfriend said we were fine, but being the observant person he is, he immediately asked why he was the one responding to a potential 911 call, not the police, or even the hotel lobby. The man said he works at the hotel as a maintenance man, and they sent him to check everything out. He then asked if he could come in to check to see if everything was okay, but my boyfriend said no, and he'd be happy to let the police in if they showed up. The man became hesitant, but backed down and said, "Okay, if the police come, we'll send them." My boyfriend closed the door, but it's not sitting well with him. So he leaves to go ask the front desk about it and tells me to deadbolt the door when he leaves and not to answer it for anyone. He came back about a half hour later and told me the front desk knew nothing about it. We didn't leave the room the rest of the night and kept the deadbolt on the rest of the time we were at the hotel. I can't even imagine what might have happened if I had opened the door while my boyfriend was out getting us food or just out wandering around, but I'm glad he was there with me.